All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about the Xoris. The Xoris obviously has a bit of a storied history, going from being like the best general use stat stick in the game, to being nerfed, to glaives getting changed, to being one of the best melee weapons in the game, but always being kind of second fiddle to the Glaive Prime. And now, with the additions to melee added in Whispers in the Wall, we have yet another version that I believe to be quite dominant for melee weapons, even with the new Incarnon melee weapons. So, this is going to be a weapon that I think is probably just going to be tops among people who just want a functional melee weapon as fast as possible, because it is, of course, still excellent for new players. It is just a quest weapon that you get. And now it has an upgrade path that is honestly quite easy. That puts it just over the top. With that being the maxed out version of this build that you see here. So this build is pretty much all identical to what I've showed in the past for the maxed out version of the build, except we have an Exilus slot now, so we added Whirlwind because projectile speed is very nice, as this glaive is a bit on the slow side compared to Glaive Prime, and that was always a thing that was a little annoying, but it is much faster with Whirlwind added. And then the most important thing being melee influence. So this arcane has basically been tailor-made precisely for the Xoris, as far as I can tell. This reads, on melee electricity status, 20% chance for elemental melee status effects to apply to enemies within 20 meters for 18 seconds. Cannot refresh while active. So, what the Xoris does is on heavy attack, similar to the Glaive Prime, which always procs slash on heavy attack, the Xoris always procs electricity, whether you mod for it or not. Meaning, there is a near 100% uptime on melee influence, and because every single enemy you hit with electric procs, or every single enemy you hit always gets an electric proc, that means whenever this shares those procs within a 20-meter radius, every single enemy that you hit all get electric procs equal to the number of enemies you hit with your glaive explosion, and the Xoris has the largest glaive explosion of any glaive. So if you hit 20 enemies, all 20 of them get 20 electricity procs. And electricity procs are no heat procs, but they don't do no damage, and whenever you stack a ton of them, which is usually kind of a pain, funny things can happen, especially when you can throw the Xoris more than once, and the Xoris's upfront damage is already quite large. So, as a comparison point, we're going to unequip this entirely and show basically the damage output that the Xoris had before, which is already quite good, and we're going to show it against the very, very tough 20 Corrupted Heavy Gunners with the Steel Path modifier, being some of the strongest enemies that most players will ever see, and most players won't ever see, actually. So, for that, their AI is, of course, paused, but this is just to show the damage. So the damage output just generally of the Xoris has always been pretty good. It is a fantastic weapon for new players for a reason. It requires very few mods, and this is, of course, like kind of the top end of what you would be getting, because this is with all of your very expensive Prime mods and so on and so forth. But these level 200 Corrupted Heavy Gunners, it can handle it. It can do it. Obviously, this is on corrosive damage currently, which is a favorable damage type against these enemies. But even still, like, this is totally a reasonable, good performance. You know, it's no Incarnon, but it is quite good. And we are very okay with this, especially because given any kind of buffing, this will just shred all of Steel Path for pretty much any player. With that, whenever you add melee influence, whether you have a really full powered up build or not, these enemies start to really not like it. They start to really, really not like it. We're going to refresh these guys and eliminate them from this land. They are all dead. So that's what melee influence lets us do with the Xoris, because they all just share every single elemental proc that they get. And that is really, really good. Also, big thing of note is that they share it within 20 meters from where they are. So, if I throw the glaive over there, and it blows up, and it hits someone standing here, it also goes 20 meters that direction. So, that is a gigantic radius to kill fodder enemies, which, of course, there will usually be plenty of, because not only is it in that direction, it is also in that direction. So, if you hit guys on either side, it's kind of like a, sort of 60-meter-ish gigantic bubble AoE that's going to put electric procs on everything near the kind of epicenter of where you threw the Xoris. And that's on every single throw that you make, which turns out is really good. To show just how really good this is, we of course have our new player build. This is the new player build that I usually suggest people go for. It is quite accessible outside of Astral Twilight being a little bit of a pain to get, and Volatile Quick Return being nice but not necessary if you don't have it, and otherwise, pretty normal stuff here. Regular Pressure Point, regular True Steel, which, of course, means that we are not even considering that you do get Sacrificial Steel for free and can upgrade this build with it very, very significantly with just under double the critical chance stats, but we're not even going to consider that for this. Let's just consider that you've only added melee influence to the very bare bones build of the Xoris. With that, you will note that it performs... I don't know if I don't throw far enough. Similarly. Very similarly. Now, I hear what you're saying. Well, that's 21 copies of the new Influence Arcane. Like, that's... I mean, it's a rare Arcane. What do you want us to... Like, are we to... just? I mean, who's going to farm this thing like that quickly as a newer player? It just seems a bit unlikely, doesn't it? Well, I'm happy to note that if we just simply break this down to an unranked copy, which means one single copy, uno, only one, which requires very little work on anyone's part, as long as you have gotten to the point where you can get it. You only need to get the drop once, and then the performance of what you're getting out of this looks like this. Which, while obviously not quite as good, I don't know, to me looks pretty good still. Obviously, you will run into, like, the lower range being the primary downside, but whenever you've got enemies grouped up, even whenever there's, like, only two of them next to each other, this damage really is not bad. It's whenever there's just a single guy that you begin to suffer with the basically brand new player fresh off the boat build with a single copy of this Arcane. And the 3 heavy units thing is probably not going to happen, and more enemies are pretty much always filtering in regular missions. So I don't think that this is going to be something you're going to run into all the time. So, with the barest of bones, this works exceedingly well. And that's without even considering that you could use an item an ability, or an item, I suppose, to group the enemies together. Looking at you, Zephyr players. And then the downgraded range on melee influence won't matter so much. So yeah, if you don't have a rank 5, I don't think you need to worry particularly about that. While it is a considerable upgrade, it is absolutely not needed. And I would say that the Xoris, as it stands now, is competing with... It actually probably just legitimately is the strongest melee weapon that isn't an Incarnon. Because obviously, the war crimes that we committed with Saren recently, which also uses melee influence, of note, are a bit more extreme than what we're seeing here. But this also works on every single Warframe. All of them can just equip this and do nonsense to it, which really is quite a leap in power to just toss out there. So yeah, this is absolutely excellent. Let's take it into Steel Path and just, like, you know, throw it at some idiots and have them, you know, simply crumple and die. Sounds good to me. All right. Let's, I mean, let's make quick work of them. Really, honestly. Just, it's not going to go good for them. It's not going to go good for them. Not at all.
Scans show Grenier harvesting Kuba nearby. Set off the alarms to draw them out, then steal their Kuba catalysts.
Yeah. Yes, you steal their Kuba catalysts, for sure.
Have shut down the environmental
More like steal their souls.
modified life support capsules. Use these to sustain your environment.
We, of course, will not be needing to throw out roar or anything here, as we're going to be just fine without it, as you will clearly be able to tell. We are using the full build here, but yeah, I mean, I expect you'll use more than just the weapon entirely by its lonesome if you were a newer player. Probably, you know, throw a throw an ability or two in there somewhere. Oh yeah, once you get this thing, I mean, fully juiced up, it's criminal. Like, I mean, this is, to be clear, I would say that this is quite a bit stronger than some full Warframes that are supposedly DPS Warframes. Biggest problem currently is that the door's closed.
I delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
Yeah, you can just see the absurdism here. Also see Helios getting in the way of me throwing this occasionally. Here, let me actually I have to go collect all of my loot here from all the enemies dying. Otherwise, we're gonna run out of life support.
Life support on the way.
One of the biggest problems with killing enemies very far away. We're what, 2.5 minutes in, 336. Just excellent. I think I actually killed enough enemies that I despawned some of the life support. Whoops.
Another life support capsule is now available.
Give me all of your stuff. Oh, this is actually an amazing room for this. Hit enemies on like all sides of it as they come in there. I should have considered moving down here earlier. You can see the Xmas are a little resilient to this, because it is like a lot of like pure status overload. But they die pretty easily to just a couple extra throws. Although whenever they're very surrounded by enemies, it's still pretty significant upfront damage there. The Acolyte is a point of contention because, unfortunately, they do have a limit to how many statuses they can have on them. That being said, the Xoris has always been an excellent new player option for killing them, so it's not a problem. Do a Mercy for a laugh. I mean, I guess, honestly, like, if you really are having trouble with any Eximus with this, I guess you could just Mercy them all the time.
When you are ready, go to extraction.
Oh yeah, those specific resistances. Yeah, Eximus, of course, always giving the very elemental forward builds a little more trouble than the others. But even with that, we're at 688 and it's not even 6 minutes yet. Just like, you know, this is a kill rate that I would be happy with on, on an entire Warframe kit. This is a kill rate I used to attribute to Mesa as like, ah yes, very good. And obviously new Mesa, a little bit of a different story, but yeah, this weapon is just obscene. And the really insane thing is whenever you take this to low levels, to be clear, because those like electric spreads that it will do, a single electric proc at low levels, and by low levels I mean a regular path, is almost always enough to like kill every single enemy within the radius. So you're hitting like a group of guys, and that group of guys means you're hitting the whole tile with what essentially amounts to instant kill damage. Also worth noting, an option for this build is to go Radiation. Because whenever you spread Radiation, it turns off the Eximus buffs. Because the enemies are no longer all allies. But usually, I mean, not even a consideration normally. Let's go over here and grab some air. Probably this way, too, for air. Oh, yeah, we got some over here. Oh, yeah, just some hiding down here. Some further off guys. Eximus being pricks, as usual. There's Mania, who will not like it. Bunch more life support here. Yeah, we're at 1,000, and we're not even at 9 minutes, and we're at 1,000 kills. And I like. It's odd because I don't feel like this like looks as impressive as it is, but like it's hard to tell just how many enemies this is killing because it goes so far. Like it reaches back into the back and like reaches past all these Eximus and just does so much to these huge crowds. Arctic Xmas, of course, being the most annoying. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how, like, what the kill rate looks like at 10 minutes, but we already hit well and comfortable for that. Yeah, right at 10 minutes here. 1,200. Just honestly obscenely good with no buffs. Just like purely just throwing the Xoris here. Although I guess we do have the Helios increase for a little bit of crit damage, but yeah, just yeah. No, I mean the new melee influence is very, very good on a couple of weapons. But this one is so accessible to new players, and like it's gonna perform basically just like that, even with the new player build with influence on it. And you know, you're gonna get most of that effect, especially if you have any grouping, even if you're using a totally unranked copy of influence, which I think really says a lot. Also, I accidentally started a Kuva harvest. But yeah, that's what's going on with the Xoris now. It is now easily competing with the Glaive Prime. I will say the Glaive Prime will continue to beat it in terms of single target, of course, especially single targets where ignoring armor is so important. But if you're just like wanting the Glaive for like, you know, a kind of grenade AoE clear, the Xoris is definitely the way to go for that now, because it just eliminates fodder from the scenario. And, you know, a little bit of damage buffing goes a long way for making it so that the heavy targets aren't so heavy either. And especially if you're armor stripping, then it's just over and doesn't even matter what level the enemies are, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's the new Xoris. It's very good. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. And, of course, as usual, thanks very much to the patrons for supporting the channel, especially the $10 patrons, Alex Barnum, Andrew, Angel SBM, Arbiter Daydream, Benuven, Blotomatic, Brandon Coggin, Brutus Salazar, Canolathra, Dylan Dworsky, Thrain, Afon, James Hartshorn, GC4 Science, John Lobdell, Joshua Adams, Luzanth, Bigokel, Ninty Ginja, Michta, Nerve, Ramox Sedate, Ruby, Sharp247, Tamrielic Wastelander, The Coupon of Death, Homeworm, Victor Palmer, Waifu Wars Wadded, and Zerafir. And of course, thank you very much to all of the $5 and $2 patrons as well. It is much appreciated, because I've been asked this a lot. I am doing the 2024 Warframe tier list, but I need to get last year's data from whenever DE releases that, which hopefully happens on the January dev stream. But that's what's holding that up, because, you know, that kind of factors into Warframe's getting S ranks or not. But yeah, that's what's going on. And thanks. Thank you, everybody.